This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Somalia's Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for suicide bomb attack that killed at least 15 army recruits in Mogadishu. US President Joe Biden arrives in Geneva for meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin set for Wednesday. And vaccine shortages bite in many African nations as COVID-19 infections overwhelm hospitals. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Coming up in business. Britain and Australia announce a free trade deal following the UK's exit from the EU. And South African Airways is on track to get a $257 million injection over the next 3 years. But first we begin with current affairs, and we begin the hour in Somalia, where a suicide bomber has killed at least 15 army recruits at a military training camp in the capital Mogadishu. Police have said more than 20 others were wounded when the bomber, wearing an explosive vest, disguised himself as a trainee and entered the General Dagobadan military camp in Medina district. The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab extremist group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Soldiers, military facilities and hotels are common targets for Al-Shabaab. United States President Joe Biden is in Geneva to meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. Their first meeting is expected to include U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The sit-down is part of Biden's Europe tour, coming after key meetings of the Group of Seven and NATO leaders. Expectations for the meeting span from arms control agreements to other potential areas of cooperation. Since taking office in January, Biden has repeatedly pressed Putin to take action to stop Russian-originated cyber attacks on companies and governments in the U.S. and around the globe. He has also decried the imprisonment of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Now, China has accused NATO of hypocrisy and the United States of being sick after the G7 published a communique criticizing China over issues ranging from Taiwan to trade. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson made the comments in Beijing earlier today. Wu Guoshu tells us more.
NATO says China's ambitions and behavior present systemic challenges to the international order and to areas relevant to the alliance's security. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has accused NATO of double standards when it comes to military spending. NATO is calling on member countries to increase their spending to at least 2% of GDP, but at the same time, the Western military alliance has publicly called Chinese spending a threat.
China's national defense budget is 1.3% of its GDP, far from NATO's requirement. China's per capita military spending is lower than the global average and less than 1/5 of NATO's. NATO has a notorious historical record and has a lot of debt. It's brought war and turmoil to the world many times. China will never forget the historic tragedy of NATO bombing the Chinese embassy in Yugoslavia. It's a debt of blood to the Chinese people. China will not pose a systemic challenge to anyone, but China will safeguard its own sovereignty, security and development interests.
The G7 published a communique on Sunday after closing their summit in England. In the document, they criticized China due to its affairs in Hong Kong, Xinjiang and Taiwan. Zhao Lijian said the G7 is slandering China and grossly interfering in the country's internal affairs.
What's being said is a deliberate slandering of China and interferes in China's internal affairs. It's a serious violation of the UN's Charter, contrary to peaceful development and win-win cooperation. It has revealed the efforts of a few countries, such as the US, to create conflict and contradictions. China is strongly dissatisfied with and firmly opposes this. The US is sick. The G7 should take her pulse and prescribe for her first.
China reaffirmed that the era of one country or a group of countries dictating global politics is over. It says multilateralism in the international community is more important than ever, and that forcing other countries into camps goes against the trend of history and is doomed to fail. CGTN, Beijing.
Health authorities at Uganda's National Referral Hospital and the main COVID-19 treatment center say they cannot meet the current oxygen needs for the growing number of patients. The hospital management says the facility has surpassed its installed production capacity of 2,083 litres per minute and is now turning to private firms for oxygen support. Uganda has so far registered more than 63,000 cases of COVID-19 and over 920 people are hospitalized at health centers across the country.
The requirement of oxygen will depend on the number of patients and at what level of oxygen they require. Because you find a patient requiring 70 liters of oxygen per minute, and yet the normal patient in the normal ICU requires between 1 and 10. So one patient in COVID ICU consumes the oxygen that would be required by 10 very sick patients in a normal ICU. As of now, we are making for 200 patients. But when your numbers continue increasing, we will not have the oxygen to meet the demand of the 900 bed capacity that we have here.
The DRC has also reported a significant increase in COVID-19 cases in the capital, Kinshasa. The city has lately been recording more than 250 cases a day, the highest daily total since the pandemic began. The country's president, Felix Tshisekedi, has warned he may be forced to take drastic measures to curb the spread of the disease. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
A surge in COVID-19 cases in the DRC capital, Kinshasa, has overwhelmed many hospitals. Patients are in distress. Freddy Kalonji was admitted to this hospital last week in critical condition.
If you see the first day they bring me over here, it was like, I was like, I'm going to pass away today. Same thing for the old man, like, the other side over there. I was like, I'm going to pass away, but they think they know the way they're doing. That's why today you see I'm still like talk a little bit. Everything is feel good about it.
Health workers have to make do with the available medical supplies to try and save lives.
En effet, depuis 2 à 3 semaines, nous avons assisté.
We have recorded a significant increase in COVID-19 cases over the past 2 or 3 weeks. We spent quite a long period without registering cases, but now many people have tested positive in this hospital.
More than 35,000 cases have been recorded across the DRC since the pandemic began last year. The country is now in its third wave. Kinshasa alone accounts for over 25,000 of those cases. The Delta variant that was first identified in India is reported to be circulating across the city. Kinshasa has an estimated population of about 15 million people. Most of them live in crowded areas on the outskirts of the city, where social distancing and the wearing of masks is not widely done. President Felix Tshisekedi says he is considering taking drastic measures to limit the spread of the pandemic. The DRC delayed its vaccination campaign in March this year over fears about reported rare side effects caused by the AstraZeneca vaccine. It eventually rolled out the vaccination exercise in April, but there has been a low uptake of the AstraZeneca jab. Now the government is planning to bring in other COVID-19 vaccines.
Mais pour le moment, il y a une équipe.
We have a team of experts that is currently working on introducing vaccines like Pfizer, Sputnik from Russia, and Moderna.
Et bien évidemment le Moderna.
According to the Health Ministry, COVID-19 has claimed close to 850 lives since last year. More than 32 victims were MPs and senior officials from the President's office. Misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines has negatively affected their rollout in the DRC, but officials have embarked on a campaign to change people's mindsets. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Let's bring in Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer at University of Exeter Medical School. He joins us live via Zoom from Bath in the UK. Dr. Pankania, thank you very much for joining us. COVID-19 vaccines are running out from West African nations as well as medical oxygen. What do you think the immediate future looks like for Africa in this regard?
It is very concerning for Africa because Africa is seriously under-immunized, and now with the rising number of cases and shortages of basic things like oxygen, ventilators, hospital capacity. It doesn't look good. My advice for Africa would be you cannot deal with this crisis on your own, and it is very easy for Western rich nations to fob you off on your own. You need the collective actions of the African Union. The whole African Union can put more pressure on Western countries to support and help you. And the same with the WHO and other world trade bodies. You need to act collectively and collectively fast.
As you mentioned, accepting that vaccine supplies from the major manufacturers might continue to be slow to arrive for Africa for a while. So what are the practical options out there for the continent in containing the surge in COVID-19 infections?
You're stuck, because without the vaccines, all you can do is infection prevention and control. And there is only so much infection prevention and control you can do. Because when you have to go to work in factories, public transport, crowded buses, etc., it is very, very difficult to do infection control. The good thing is Africa is a warm continent and most things happen outdoors, so that is your saving grace. But this is an aerosol spread infection, and you need to again buy good quality masks and wear them properly, especially indoors. But really, you need help, and you need help very fast from the richer nations, and you need the African Union to clearly say, help us, or else in the future we will have to think again about cooperating and working with you.
All right, so speaking of help, the G7 pledged 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines for poorer nations. How do you see this playing out in terms of speed of delivery and inoculation?
It is extremely disappointing to see that they can talk and talk and talk and talk again, and then finally come up with a 1 billion supply of vaccines. It's not good enough. You can do better. You should have been offering 3-4 million, 1 billion, rather than 1 billion. It's not good enough. It will not go far. And supplying 1 billion when? It should not be a case of we will supply it to you when we can. It should be a case of we will supply it to you because we care and we are honest, and we will supply it to you immediately or within the next 3 months. There is no line about when you will get it. It's only you will get it. And 1 billion is not good enough.
Thank you, Doctor. That's Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer at University of Exeter Medical School, speaking to us from Bath in the UK. Now, the World Health Organization recently endorsed CoronaVac, a Chinese COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use. This is the second Chinese vaccine to receive the green light from the WHO after the Sinopharm jab. For many middle to low-income countries like Nigeria, that decision is expected to increase vaccine supply. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam brings us more details.
Nigeria, like many other African countries, urgently needs to plug its vaccine supplies gap. The UN-backed COVAX initiative, which aims to ensure access to vaccines for poorer nations, has been struggling to meet the increasing demand for the jabs. But the WHO's approval of China's CoronaVac vaccine opens the door for it to be used in the COVAX program. Experts have lauded China's effort to supply vaccines to many countries in need.
Any vaccine that has been done must go through proper double-blind study and then randomization of the trial, making sure there is peer-reviewed. For WHO to approve that means that has happened.
China has offered 10 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the COVAX scheme. Although CoronaVac is being used in several countries like the Philippines, Brazil, Turkey and Chile, Nigeria is yet to receive any of the Chinese vaccines.
The one I'm aware of is AstraZeneca vaccine from India. My expectation, since it's been peer-reviewed and then signed off by WHO, I will expect that Nigeria should be able to get some of those vaccines into their country to be able to accelerate the vaccination of our people.
Nigeria received about 3.94 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine under the COVAX initiative, just enough to vaccinate 1.97 million people. less than 1% of the nation's 200 million strong population. CoronaVac doesn't need to be frozen, but needs to be refrigerated at between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius. This makes it suitable for developing countries facing storage infrastructure challenges. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
You're watching Africa Live. We're taking a quick break, but still ahead. We are not taking any chances. South Africans in KwaZulu-Natal scramble for stones they think could be diamonds.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Tunisian authorities have launched an online reporting portal for child sexual abuse and exploitation through the internet. The government says the number of online child abuse offences has risen since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Adnan Shawashi has the details from Tunis.
The Minister of Women, Family and Seniors explained that the online portal will help report content, images and videos deemed harmful to children.
The online portal allows listing content, deleting reported images and videos, identifying victims among children so that they can be provided with psychological support by the Delegate of Child Protection and to initiate legal proceedings against the perpetrators of these crimes.
The minister added that the online platform will also protect children against digital invasion and internet threats, especially with easing internet access in the North African state.
The number of internet users on smartphones, especially among children, has doubled since the outbreak of the pandemic. However, we've reported a sudden rise in online child sexual abuse cases during the lockdown. Our agents are very vigilant and ready to offer help and provide assistance to all vulnerable victims.
The Tunisian government's initiative is part of a joint project with the Council of Europe, the Internet Watch Foundation and UNICEF.
We welcome more positive internet use. Everyone on the two shores of the Mediterranean is aware that abuses must be targeted and stopped. This new portal is an essential tool for those efforts.
Tunisia is the first country in the Middle East and North Africa to take measures to allow individual children to submit complaints regarding specific violations of their rights. Experts have warned against the increasing number of online videos and images of sexual abuse seen by children in all countries across the globe. Between 2019 and 2021, civil society activists are calling for the need to develop new mechanisms and legislation to combat this phenomenon. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Hundreds of people have travelled across South Africa to a village in the KwaZulu-Natal province after being tipped off on the unearthing of possible diamonds there. Informal excavation has been ongoing since the weekend following the discovery by a herdsman who dug up the first stone. CGTN's Daniela Pearson brings us the details.
Hundreds of people dig through the dirt in the village of Gwahlati in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. As they excavate, they are hoping their fate has finally turned for the better. Trade has already begun for these colorless, unidentified stones said to be diamonds.
This means our lives will change because no one had a proper job. I do odd jobs here and there. When I returned home with them, the family was really overjoyed.
South Africa's Department of Mineral Resources is set to send a team of geological and mining experts to collect samples. However, the lack of analysis has not deterred the optimistic fortune seekers.
I had not seen or touched a diamond in my life. It's my first time touching it here. I hope this will make a difference at home because we are really struggling. So I hope things will be better.
Some of the diggers are selling the stones with a starting price ranging from $7 to $21.
This will really help the community. We hope crime will come to an end, especially crimes against women, because the youth do all these things because of unemployment.
The provincial government is requesting those active at the site to make way for authorities to conduct a proper inspection. There are also fears that activities there could potentially be spreading coronavirus. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
A young black South African is successfully operating a hydroponic rooftop garden project in the middle of Sandton. Sandton is one of the most affluent areas in Johannesburg and is the most important business and financial district in South Africa. It's often referred to as the richest square mile in Africa. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
Zandile Khumalo is running the first Sandton hydroponic rooftop farming project. It's quite a unique project that is helping the underprivileged with food security. Hydroponic technology allows for the crops to be grown without soil in special water solutions.
So the advantage of hydroponic farming is that you can get much more yield. You can be able to plant within a smaller space. You can be able to plant without soil. And everything that you use is basically on a neutral base, because the medium that we use is not soil. It's soilless farming. We use cocoa peat. Our produce is clean.
Zandile Khumalo is one of the few young black hydroponic farmers here. Her hydroponic farm is in the middle of one of the most affluent areas here in South Africa.
The location was that, we used to bring produce here in Sandton and cities, and therefore leafy greens is one of the things that can be found so closer that we felt that you can find it closer to where you're at, and actually building it on the rooftop was just an advantage that we're bringing just food closer to the restaurants.
Khumalo believes that most South Africans, especially those living in townships, eat a lot of fast foods. She therefore wishes to grow a variety of crops that can be used by households, such as root vegetables and herbs.
The bigger picture of the project is that the community will benefit, the schools will benefit, where learning curriculums will be put into schools, and also the clients that buy within the restaurant, they benefit the value of the produce, the freshness of the produce, and be able to taste how flavorful the produce it is when it's straight from the farm to the kitchen.
This hydroponic rooftop garden farm is collaborating with the top restaurants in this affluent area.
The greatest thing about our collaboration and the core of it was that we are closing up a value chain of us being able to sell within the shopping center. So we supply restaurants like Signature Restaurant, Pomodoro, Green Peppercorn, and also we've got some people that want to be on board so that we can be able to stride to enough to be able to send out much more produce, get more varieties within the rooftop, and be able to supply.
Hydroponics is quickly gaining popularity in places where traditional farming simply isn't an option. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Sandton, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Tunisia marked World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on Tuesday against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to data from the World Bank, the North African nation has the highest proportion of elderly people on the continent. And as Adnan Shawashi reports, more than 85% of deaths due to coronavirus were people aged 65 or older.
The Manouba Elderly Protection Center is a skilled nursing facility in the suburbs of the capital city Tunis. This model center did not record any coronavirus infections or deaths since the outbreak of the pandemic. The government-sponsored facility offers a home-like setting for senior citizens who need permanent assistance.
All our senior residents are vaccinated. We are respecting the health protocols and social distancing to protect the center's elderly residents. Our staff behaves like a substitute family. Since March 2020, no one has been allowed to leave the facility due to strict sanitary measures. This is an additional challenge. It is mentally and psychologically exhausting, but we are trained to cope with exceptional situations.
This public facility organizes tours for its elderly residents. However, the COVID-19 pandemic caused the cancellation of all outdoor activities. These senior citizens are waiting for the end of the lockdown to resume a normal life.
All elderly people feel like they have a new family in this center. The paramedical staff, the employees and the residents compensate for one's loneliness. I do not worry about the future because I know many people who've become my friends and relatives at the Elderly Protection Center. I'm waiting for the end of the pandemic to resume my daily walk in the city.
Rashid is a poet and an amateur bird breeder. The administration of the Protection Center encourages the retired resident to take care of his birds. The old man says this daily activity gives him hope and makes him feel free.
I'm very lucky because I spend many hours feeding my birds and cleaning their nests. I've written more than 300 poems as well as traditional songs. This good ambience is nurturing my creativity and imagination.
According to the health department, elderly people in nursing homes are particularly vulnerable to COVID-19 due to their age and community living. Health authorities have put in place strict infection prevention and control measures at all elderly protection centers across Tunisia. Tunisian authorities say COVID-19 took a heavy toll on older adults. Consequently, senior citizens were identified as a group at risk and strict restrictions were imposed on them. These measures have caused concerns about their mental health. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's now catch up with the day's business news. Uche joins us with the latest.
Thank you, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Britain and Australia announce a free trade deal following the UK's exit from the EU. And South African Airways is on track to get a $257 million injection over the next 3 years.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Now, Britain and Australia have announced a free trade deal, which the British government has hailed as an important step in building new trade relationships following the departure from the European Union. Now, the agreement will eliminate tariffs on all British goods and boost jobs and businesses across the UK. Britain has also signed off a cap on tariff-free agricultural imports from Australia for 15 years in an effort to protect farmers. On the other hand, cars, Scotch whisky and confectionery will be cheaper to sell in Australia because of the agreement. Britain is also Australia's 8th largest trading partner with a two-way trade worth about $20.7 billion.
This is important economically. There's no question about that. I'm not going to exaggerate the overall increase in our respective GDPs that will flow from this, but I think it's more important politically and symbolically. We're opening up to each other, and this is the prelude to a general campaign of opening up around the world.
Where you have challenges with one trading partner from time to time, then the ability to be able to diversify your trade into more and more countries is incredibly important. And I genuinely appreciate the way that the UK have engaged in this agreement because it reflects an understanding of that. And so this provides more opportunities and greater resilience for Australia's exporters all around the world.
Now, a few weeks ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, gave the official go-ahead for construction to begin on 4 new nuclear reactors in China. Well, our Alihosa Milenkovic is in Moscow, where he spoke with the Russian nuclear scientists and officials about what that cooperation means for Russia.
This is Yevgeny Pakirmanov, head of Russia's main exporter of nuclear energy technology, the Rosatom Overseas, a part of the Rosatom State Nuclear Energy Corporation. He has extensive experience collaborating with his Chinese colleagues in all aspects of joint projects in the industry.
This collaboration presents us with absolutely colossal possibilities. The Chinese partners are providing the rhythm. They are building fast, they're built with quality. The reactors we've built together are the most successful, the most effective, and everybody has recognized it.
Sino-Russian collaboration in peaceful usage of nuclear energy started 3 decades ago. Now, many reactors built with Russian technology can be found throughout China, with the nuclear power plant in Tianwan being the largest and the most important one. But that's not where the collaboration ends. The experts say that the future of nuclear energy lies in fusion reactors, and the scientists from both countries are working closely together in that area too. The ITER fusion reactor is a project in which both sides are cooperating with the scientists from many other countries. The multi-billion-dollar project will be the testing ground for many future nuclear technologies, which participating countries could use for their own individual projects. Among those are the Russia's latest nuclear fusion testbed, the tokamak T-15MD in Moscow, and the Chinese tokamak device named East in Hefei.
We have very good cooperation with Hefei, with Chengdu team of fusion scientists, and a number of our Russian equipment now in operation on Chinese best experiments.
One of those groundbreaking experiments took place on May 28th at the aforementioned East, located in Hefei. For 101 seconds, Chinese scientists successfully held the temperature of the plasma inside at over 120 million degrees, something no human has ever achieved previously. Their Russian colleagues in Moscow are proud to have participated in this and many other joint nuclear energy breakthroughs. Alyosha Milenkovic, CGTN, Moscow.
Well, let's now turn our attention to the aviation sector. Emirates has posted an annual loss of $5.5 billion, its first in more than 30 years. Now, restrictions brought on by the coronavirus pandemic have led to a 66% revenue plunge, while passenger traffic fell 88.3%. Now, Emirates largely depends on international travel, as the airline has no domestic market to cushion against border restrictions and closures. However, Emirates has said that Dubai's government will continue to support the airline through the pandemic. According to the annual report for the year to March 31st, the government had injected an extra $1.1 billion into the airline since disclosing a $2 billion lifeline last year. And still on aviation matters, the former South African Airways CEO, Vuyani Jarana, has welcomed the new deal to save the airline. He says selling a 51% stake in the nation's grounded carrier to the Takatso consortium will give the airline the opportunity to operate as a functional business. Now, the deal comes about 6 weeks after the airline emerged from a lengthy bankruptcy proceeding, having reduced its workforce by almost 80%. Here's Angelo Coppola with the details.
The consortium plans to invest $257 million in the venture over the next 3 years. The partners suggest that there is a potential future listing of SAA on the cards.
That at a partner level, you now have private sector influence. So the viability of routes, the return on investments, all those are the type of things and the criteria on which the new SAA will be built.
Some analysts have concerns about the proposed deal and what's needed to sustain the airline through its startup phase.
Total buy-in for Harris is the 3 billion rand that they have said that they will put in as operating capital. This must be seen as an additional amount to the remains of the 2 billion that had been made available by the supposed business rescue plan, or the budget allocation of 10.5 towards that. However, a fair amount of that has already been depleted. But whether that's sufficient to relaunch the airline, I have my gravest doubts.
Whether the airline succeeds or not will depend on its focus, scale, and spending the $357 million it has carefully. It will struggle, say analysts, if it tries to launch into several business segments at the same time.
And on that basis, it should be able to scale up, but on a very conservative level, because you have to expect that there will be startup losses, and it will take quite a lot of time to actually get the reliability and trustworthiness of Mango and SAA brands back into the market.
The proposed airline has another challenge that it has to overcome, especially on its long-haul routes, its old fleet of aircraft. And then there's the competition.
It's lost a lot of its route network already to competitors, whether they be international competitors having moved in. Qatar in particular has done a lot of eating of South African routes. Regionally, it was probably hoping it could step into the gap left by SA Express. But Airlink and Samair have done that very effectively.
Should the deal go through, it's good news for staff in terms of job security. It's good news for loyal supporters of the airline, and also good news for taxpayers because they won't have to keep guaranteeing and bailing out the airline. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, scores of small and medium-sized businesses across Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, are reeling from the indefinite suspension of social media giant Twitter. Well, CGTN's Alexandria Majala looks at the ban's effects on entrepreneurs in the country.
Lagos-based entrepreneur Ogechi Egemonu was selling more than $1,200 worth of watches, shoes and handbags on Twitter per week. Now, with the site suspended by the Nigerian government, Egemonu does not know how she will cope.
Since the ban, I have not been able to post to my customers. I've not been able to reach out to my existing customers. I've not been able to get new customers. I've not been able to put images of restocked items.
Nigeria announced the move on June 4th, 2 days after the platform removed a post from President Muhammadu Buhari that threatened to punish regional separatists. Most telecommunication sites have blocked access.
I know for sure it's been very damaging because a lot of firms run on ad campaigns. A lot of business opportunity has been created just by the whole influencer thing on Twitter. People make money, people spend money. It's kind of like a mini ecosystem on its own. And then just snatching that away from Nigerians is kind of unfair.
NOI polls estimates that 39.6 million Nigerians use Twitter, 20% of them for business advertisement and 18% to look for employment opportunities. Experts warn its lack of ready availability, as it's accessible using a virtual private network that masks location, could ripple across the economy. Parliament's Minority Caucus warned that the suspension was costing Nigerians billions on a daily basis.
We're looking at potential loss in their revenue, looking at potential loss, and then the ripple effect would be on output growth, because if manufacturing sector is affected, if businesses are affected, if trade sector is affected, we're looking at potential, decline in economic growth and then economic development. Why? Because the standard of living will be a lot worse compared to the cost of living.
The suspension will hit young Nigerians hardest, among whom there's a 45% unemployment rate. The government last week said that all social media sites must register a local entity and get a license to operate, citing complaints over lost money as proof that the ban was effective. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Now, Kenya's tourism sector has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is now trying to seek new tourism models to strengthen the industry going forward. While traditional tourist attractions are slowly finding their feet, Agri-tourism is also picking up. It offers visitors an opportunity to tour farms and experience farming firsthand. And one such a farm is Gatura Greens, a purple tea farm in Kenya that is gaining popularity amongst local and international visitors. CGTN's Robert Nagila toured it and now reports.
The purple green.
It begins with a little background about the farm, over a cup of purple tea around a bonfire, and some history about tea farming in Kenya by Robert Karanja.
We do not put any pesticides on our teas.
Situated about 70 kilometers from the capital, Nairobi, Gatura Greens is home to the first purple tea farm in Kenya. It offers farm tours, an idea that came about in 2018.
I could completely see how I could curate this into an experience where everyone could get access to all the beautiful things that are happening here.
And in October 2020, Gatura Greens was born.
We're just like, well, everyone is really craving to get out of their spaces because we've all been in lockdown and this is all outdoors, so it's safe. And we're like, why not just start it in the middle of COVID?
The farm is slightly bigger than we're told.
After the briefing, Robert, a walking encyclopedia on Martis tea, takes the guests to the purple tea farm.
Flavors of the tea begins from here. Strong concentration is on the bud. Coming down the stalk, the first leaf. Down the stalk, the second leaf.
Here, visitors are taught how to pick purple tea.
We've been to the coast, which is great, but this is a very, I would say, underappreciated side of Kenya, which not a lot of people know about.
I feel like this is a more hands-on experience. Like, I'm really looking forward to actually making the tea.
As the tea is taken back to the farm, visitors are taken on a hike through a bamboo forest to a waterfall on the property where swimming is allowed.
Depends on the moisture content.
After lunch, guests are taught how to roast the tea leaves they picked, roll it, and pack it to take it home with them when they leave. Among the visitors is a buyer from the United States.
There's always a story with tea, and being able to share that with my customers and my clients, to be able to really show them firsthand where the tea is coming from, was something that was very high on my priority list.
The climax is the tea ceremony, which is basically tea testing of 12 different types of tea. This here is known as purple tips, and it's brilliant. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Gatanga, Kenya.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, global investments in energy is projected to bounce back by up to $1.9 trillion this year. We'll bring you more on that at top of the hour. For now, back to you, Peninah.
Thank you. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. Dance therapy helping rape victims in the DRC to deal with trauma.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
When I look at Kibera through my lens, I see the happiness, joy, kindness, and the togetherness of the people of Kibera.
I also love the power of social media because it has really played a very, very big role. We did videos, and those videos were sent through social media.
Nikikanyaga tu kwa court, huwa nafeel kuna kitu natafuta na ng'ang'ana, yaani hata niwe mzuri kushinda na dada.
Egypt has been celebrating the Chinese Dragon Boat Festival, and the ancient sport of dragon boat racing has been growing in Egypt. This year, Cairo saw the birth of its National Dragon Boat Federation. Here's Adel Mahrouri with more details.
Dozens of Cairo residents gathered at the Nile River for a special celebration. Chinese music filled the venue. Colorful boats decorated the ancient river to mark the birth of the Dragon Boat Festival nearly 2 millennia ago.
The sport is greatly and quickly expanding globally. Establishing a federation and introducing the sport in Egypt is a great step We have an African federation, yet when countries strong in sports like Egypt adopt this sport, it could encourage more African countries to join the movement.
Dragon boats take athletes through a unique cultural experience. Preserving the design of the boat and the usage of ancient drums gives people a taste of ancient China, making the sport appealing for people from all different backgrounds. 14 nationalities joined Cairo's celebration of the Chinese festival.
I'm an American. Actually, I'm American, but my family's from India. And I'm doing a exercise that's come from China. So it already says this in my own individual capacity. I've already have 3 different, and I'm doing it in Egypt. So 4 countries touch my life just in doing dragon boating here, you know. So it just shows how it transcends. I think sports transcends culture and countries and boundaries of nations.
Egyptian organizers have been celebrating the Dragon Boat Festival for nearly 3 years. Every time they try to add exciting elements to the celebrations to attract more people to join the sport.
I attended the festival once in China. Of course, there is no comparison in the size of the celebrations. After all, it's a sport they care the most about. Every year we try to develop the celebrations here. We mimic some of the signs of celebrations in China. It's been getting bigger every year. This year is an exception because of the restrictions the pandemic is enforcing.
Dragon boating was introduced to Egypt in 2016. The nation established its domestic federation for the sport this year. The day also marks the 30th anniversary for the founding of the Sports International Federation. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, rape is still pervasive after civil wars that plagued the country for decades. But at a rehabilitation center founded by a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, women are learning to reconnect with their bodies through dance. CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma reports.
At a hall in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a group of women dance, united by the darkest of experiences. They are rape survivors. This is a rehabilitation center in South Kivu, a region still gripped by violence 18 years after the official end of a civil war.
I started doing this because of the girls who came to us in a state of silence. They were raped at a young age and they didn't know how to express themselves. And when I saw that through dance therapy we could diagnose them through the movements of the body, I thought, why not adapt it to the youngest and see how it works?
For one 20-year-old woman in Lusambo's class who asked not to be identified, it has worked well. She says she was raped 3 years ago by unidentified men in combat fatigues. She arrived at the Panzi Foundation in Bukavu in what she describes as a very bad state.
I was too scared. I was hiding and didn't even want others to see me. I stayed locked up in my room. But thanks to dance therapy, I began to approach people. Through dance therapy, I understand that my life was not yet over. I realized that I was still important in society.
The Panzi Hospital and Rehabilitation Center was founded by Dr. Denis Mukwege, a Congolese gynecologist. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018 for his efforts to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war.
More than 60,000 women have already been treated here. We were able to organize holistic care, which means we don't just do the medical treatment anymore. We also do psychological care. We support women to reintegrate them into society by empowering them.
Sexual violence has been a feature of the violence in eastern Congo for more than 20 years. Experts say progress has been made and several high-level militia and army commanders have been prosecuted for rape in recent years. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
And coming up in sports. The last African Rugby Sevens Olympics berth is up for grabs.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks,